You're listening to 12 Degrees Freely with Madeline Andrews, striving to level the playing field so people can be, do, and have the life they always wanted. Hi, Madeline Andrews here, also known as the Energy Diva. Yes, another fun topic. Today we're going to discuss transforming duality, escaping the world of two sides into greater possibilities. Okay, by now I'm sure you've heard of the law of opposites. Wet and dry, hot and cold, black and white, old and new, even and odd, good and evil. You catch my point. If I were to express the law of opposites using sacred geometry, it would be a line, being that it is a motion moving from a center point outwards in two opposite directions, forming two streams of energy that run at right angles to one another. So instead of the concept of unity, which would be represented by a circle, you would have the concept of duality or two represented by the line. Taking it a step further, this dual motion in nature is caused by these two opposing concepts known as the masculine principle or electric principle and the feminine principle or the magnetic principle, known together as the concept called electromagnetic differentiation. And you guessed it, the difference between the two is because of the different rates of vibration. Vibration. Everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. Nothing is at rest. I think that's why I'm irked when I hear the statement, energy has to move. Well, duh. Everything moves and vibrates. Movement produces motions. Two different motions at right angles is what causes opposite aspects. Motion produces pressure. Pressure results in waves, and consequently, all of the waves produce fields. And the difference between the various fields is because of the rates of vibrations involved and the speed of the information processing. There are objects, which again are a result of vibration, such as a revolving wheel that maintains such a constant vibration of intensity and rapid motion that it gives the impression that it's at rest, but it's not. And herein lies the problem with perception and changing those damn textbooks. Einstein, through synergetics, scientifically disproved Newton's theory and paradigm of objects being stationary or at rest or no change. From his line of thinking, just like those who thought the world was flat, it was not normal to have anything in motion. And here Einstein was, understanding the concept of radiation, which changed the whole game. But here, you still have people going around thinking that conceptually speaking, everything isn't a result of motion, and from that quote-unquote line of thinking, that motion has an opposite that we've wrapped our head around and defined. There's no experience, no form without motion. And for those of us who see and sense in the spirit, are you aware of the rate of vibration you're witnessing or experiencing higher than that which is producing a certain type of form acceptable to the masses? That is why it is so important to keep things quote unquote natural and in the field of possibilities instead of a conditional field that is fixed. Oh, I have a name for this, so this is this. Is it really? Oh, wait till we get to the observer effect. But let's go back and look at duality. Duality is linear. That is a line. And Buckminster Fuller reminds us in his book Cosmography, oh my gosh, yes, I love that book. But he explains that the line is a trajectory of an energy event. Now, if two events converge in the same place at the same time, an interference occurs. And that result is a reflection, a refraction, a smash up, or a conjoined line of travel. Wow. You do realize solids can't pass through other solids or intersect other solids, right? So, with all of this, all of what we know about linear and duality and opposite, is utilizing this going to take us where we want to go with problem solving, with the innovation, with any of this lower density energy here in Malkuth or the physical plane? Is using any of it, using the same line of thought or energy to problem solve that got us into the same problems we're looking at right now? The very thing Einstein cautioned us not to do? Do we have any choice here? After all, we ate the forbidden fruit off the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yes, another case of duality. Or maybe, just maybe, that interference line of energy actually stops those two lines of energy traveling from the center, onward and outward into infinity, has them meet at different points in space at 90 degrees, right angles to one another, opens them up, and by doing so, opens them into higher realms of possibilities. You know, quantum does this. And what if quantum is the solution, that second tree in the garden, that gives us the solutions that we need? Perhaps that is what they're talking about, and what the bleep do we really know? Or in J.J. Hurtak's Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch. And by the way, if you're going to read that book, I strongly suggest you read the introduction book first, like I had to go back and do and read, because it's a heavy hitter. And perhaps that's what Drunvalo Melchizedek is talking about in both volumes of The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And Maureen St. Germain in her new book, Beyond the Flower of Life, Advanced Merkaba Teachings, Sacred Geometry, and Opening of the Heart. Yes, I read a lot. And Dr. Joe Dispenza in Becoming Supernatural, and Valdemar Valerian in Matrix 4. And all of those speakers and authors and teachers that I talk about in episode 2 of this season, Consciousness on Blast. See, the Kabbalion by 3 initiates tells us that the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. And it's true. We can hear things over and over and have the same similar experiences over and over until something clicks. It's the aha. There's the understanding, and eventually will come the wisdom. You can hear a speaker series back in 2012, write a book in 2015, and it's not timely, not just yet, until perhaps a pandemic comes along and it kind of nudges you to go back and sit down with the book and through the teachings for clarity and understanding, and perhaps repositioning to the direction you feel you're being drawn to. So let's briefly go down the rabbit hole of quantum, perhaps third, fourth, and fifth dimension of space, perhaps even higher. It's a higher dimension, a lower density of form, and more of that space that comes with less judgment or no judgment, moving you into that place of unconditional love and more possibilities. It's more, actually, infinite possibilities, because you're not carrying all of that weight and density that lower energies produce. Some might even call it nirvana or heaven on earth. And I think ancient Eastern teachings like the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu hinted at it a while back. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of all things. I mean, think about it. Normalization. People tend to believe they understand something when they got a name for it. So yeah, nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. No judgment. No belief system attached. No density. And also, when you name something or label it, thus giving that fixed conditional energy, you're excluding some other information about it because the person naming it probably doesn't have all of the possible information about the thing being named. So yeah, without all of that, the name that can be named is not the eternal name. In that field of consciousness with those boundless possibilities, it's fluid, not locking anything in with a name or other stuff giving it density. And don't get me wrong, it still is a system. But perhaps now, without all of that density, lighter, moving towards unconditional love and having all that yumminess of you, you're working with a new set of operatives. For you see, all techniques will work within the confines of that system subset for which they were built. And all restrictions and limitations are still going to be in that system, even with that lighter density, unless you build in no limits within that system. And even within that conceptual lighter system, that quantum field where the concept of photons have wave and particle capabilities, and every here and now particle has an antiparticle, and it's possible that pulsed light can move faster than the speed of light, like the concept of Tachyon energy. And there's virtual particles, which are those particles that don't exist or only have an existence when acted upon. You have to keep it in potentiality so that it doesn't become fixed and conditional. By the way, to learn about all the particles I just talked about, it's explained in Cindy Dale's book, The Subtle Body, an encyclopedia of your energetic body. And I strongly suggest that you stay open to where the information that you're looking for is coming from and where you receive it. I recently had an internal conflict with a training I was taking where some of the aspects came from the East. It's an ancient Eastern teaching. And I'm in the class and something is annoying me to the point that I'm constantly asking questions in the class because I've got to figure out why. I've had some Dr. Dane here from Access Consciousness, and I've worked with Rika Zimmerman long enough to know that my anger was a sign of consciousness. When something isn't your truth, you've got to get to the nagging. But I'm asking questions to figure it out, possibly coming across like a real asshole, but it didn't matter because I had to figure this out. That little voice, my intuition, was telling me that as Westerners, maybe we add a little here and a little there, to jazz it up and make it intriguing, to make it fun. But perhaps that wasn't the way the initial intent was meant for it to be interpreted. And lo and behold, synchronicity. As Dr. Dane had explained several times in this training, I had to ask my questions and then leave it alone. I ended up invited to a free webinar series a couple days later. I think it was 2 days later, as a matter of fact, and one of the lecturers was entitled, and I kid you not, The Missing Link Between the East and the West in the Unified Field of Consciousness with Gilles Marin. He's got this new book out, Biology of Consciousness, One Mind, Five Intelligences, and yeah, you know what's next on my reading list. But he was explaining how the Eastern paradigm is different from the Western paradigm. Western is built on building blocks. You have atoms, and then they become elements that combine to make tissue, etc., etc. But from the Eastern persuasion, there are no building blocks. They don't even exist. So yeah, that erased the angst. My question opened up a door of possibility of understanding. And you can't be so full of ego and I know this and this is this period that you miss the mark altogether. Being quote unquote trapped in that world of dualism will do that to you. Being open to the way your answers show up and the possibilities, now we're cooking with gas. It's like I wrote once and recently had a conversation with someone about perhaps God put some of the clues in each and every person on the planet. Perhaps that means that sometimes you're going to have to get past your limitations and speak to, talk to, communicate with, interact with people that you would not normally speak to for whatever reason in order to put those clues together. I'm Madeline Andrews, also known as the Energy Diva. Check out my website at madelineandrews.com or energydiva.com. That's INNERGDIVA.com, or 12 Degrees Freedom, the number 12, the 2 words degrees, freedom spelled out.com. There you can find my products, services, programs, my email list, and social media links. And always remember, the greatest gift God ever gave us was the gift of mind, not the brain. Give yourself the great gift by tapping into universal mind and open yourself up to the possibilities.